Welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, thanks for tuning in. We're doing something a little different. We're exploring what really scared Gen X kids, like what only scared them. Whether real or imaginary, these things were pounded into us by our family, our friends. We found some of these silly fears absolutely terrifying. Tell us in the comments which one of these you were scared of most. I'm Victor, and straight out of the GEN Xperience, those real fears that plague Gen X kids. Today, young people's anxiety works on overtime due to all their comparing lives on social media or the constant rapid consumption down TikTok rabbit holes. But our fear? It was real, and we had it rough, living on constant alert from sleaze stacks or worrying about swallowing gum. Although many of our worries were chilling, most just turned out to be lies. Before Wednesday Addams dumped bags of them into a pool to maim the boys' polo team in her current reimagining, these aquatic monsters with the ferocious underbites appeared in everything you could possibly think of. They were dangerous hazards or part of a villain's devious scheme. They appeared so often that although they're only found in South American waterways, we were convinced that the old swimming hole or the Columbia River where I used to swim growing up were a hotbed for human-munching, bone-crunching Victor Lunchin piranha. Now, these were scary, and like most of the things on this list, we figured we'd have a lot more trouble with them throughout the rest of our lives. So we needed to be on alert. Luckily, I've never seen one. Have you? If we were worried about getting our daily allowance of fruits and vegetables, this would have seemed to be an easy way to assure that requirement. However, that would mean we would be faced with the looming horror of growing a full-sized watermelon in our bellies, or any fruit for that matter, if we were just to swallow the seeds of any number of them. It seemed harmless until you obsessed about just how they would need to get that watermelon out of your stomach, or a whole plant. Maybe a P-section surgery, a produce-arian. If you weren't vigilant to avoid all seeds from slipping by and down your gullet, you were assuredly doomed to this fate.
Sorry, kids. Eating watermelon's something you can't do till you're a little older. Wouldn't want to swallow a seed, would you?
The constant threats issued from your parents and older siblings, along with the endless flow of urban legends spewed by your friends, had us on high alert. At least every 4th of July. I certainly don't judge the current fascination of young people and their true crime obsessions, unless of course they're taking notes for a dastardly plan. I myself am a lover of the unknown, tales of strange cases, forensic deduction, peculiar crime, and of course, unsolved mysteries. Nothing today, especially those contrived ghost hunting programs, can compare to the stoic and sometimes off-putting Robert Stack, a classic Hollywood hardass who delivered unease with every story of murder, missing people, legendary creatures, or even the supernatural and otherworldly. The fog and filming techniques you couldn't wait for each week were also the nightmare fuel you settled your head down on the pillow with. Let's not forget that very famous musical sting.
Join me.
The dramatic reenactments could drive the story home, but it was those cases that would be well known in mass media that got to us just as much as those about strange grave visitors arriving in the night sky. Specifically, the episodes depicting the terrifying MO of the man known as the Unabomber, before he was front page news or even had been given the familiar moniker. I remember this story was so fear-inducing that I looked twice at random packages left in unusual places. I was excited every time Unsolved Mysteries aired, but just as much as I couldn't wait to see the night's offerings, it could also have my imagination play tricks on me. We didn't even know what it was first. As we got older and continued to crack our knuckles relentlessly to the aggravation of those around us, we got the same old story. If you crack your knuckles, you were surely going to be stricken with arthritis. Now, we would begin to see those afflicted, those with twisted and tortured fingers, and we couldn't help but pay attention. More aware, we began to think twice about popping all those finger joints, but in all honesty, it was hard to stop, and it still is. Although I quit for a total of 1.5 years, that was in high school, and there was just something so satisfying about the snap, crackle, pop as I bent each finger this way and that. An instant relief, like fingers relieved of stiffness. Cracking knuckles just felt good. And that sound was pretty fun too, especially in a pool underwater. In the end, we looked around and saw all those older folks afflicted with the disease and thought, well, if they couldn't stop, how can we possibly be expected to? If you can't beat them, pop them. As we got older and accepted that none of the myths or wives' tales worked, we discovered it was all a lie. A lie to get us to stop this annoying habit. I appreciate the effort, but can't stop, won't stop. How about you? Are you a knuckle cracker? Of course we feared being snatched off the street. This is the era where we knew what outside looked like. The stories of kidnappings told in school, unfolding on TV, or hammered in at home along with the milk cartons to demonstrate the fact were relentless. We being Gen X youth certainly took it to heart. That meant that every man offering candy, a puppy, driving an unmarked van was suspect. Hell, even the ice cream man was under suspicion. I can't say I don't appreciate the frank discussions about the topic. Parents could be brutally honest about what would happen to you if you didn't learn how to identify red flags and ended up on a milk carton too. No one shied away from it, and it made for some tough and streetwise kids growing up at a time where whether or not the safety factor was truly elevated or just hysteria, we recognize the woman in the station wagon letting you know that she's friends with your mom or that your mom's been hurt and we need to get in so she can take us there was full of shit.
Yeah, who was that?
You showed your street smarts by turning and continuing to walk, running if need be, and finding someone to tell immediately. We were a generation riding our bikes alone or in pairs, looking forward to playing outside, walking to school, walking each other to and from wherever. And this blunt education about what could happen,
Worse, a child molester.
might seem panicked today, but that fear was always in the back of our mind, and not the worst lesson we could learn. The need to read something while in the bathroom hasn't changed, just the reading material. When outdated magazines and Reader's Digest were all spent or had been cleared out, what was under or on the counter was just as good as an old-time magazine. Reading bottles of toothpaste, shampoo containers, and any other products not only improved our vocabulary, but made for some very interesting reading. Sometimes reading things we were never meant to discover, at least not for young boys like me. This might be a little sensitive to some, and I speak without any experience, but I was horrified after reading one of those usual bathroom staples. The horror, however, wasn't for me, but for my 4 older sisters. Yes, I'm talking about TSS, or... I was mortified in more ways than one, probably because of the line drawing on the side of the box were things I had never seen before. But if what I was reading was true, everyone should be alarmed. The potential danger to my sisters was all too real. After that, I only hoped and prayed they'd take all the necessary precautions, and I would never read that again. Well, moving on, but still sticking in the bathroom, how many of you looked twice into the toilet before sitting down? Were you looking for alligators? That's right, another imagined fear of Gen X youth was alligators being discarded into the sewers that, as we were told, would eventually make their way to the end of the line, your rear end sitting above on the toilet seat waiting to be snapped at. It's not clear how they got in the sewers, but if they were just being cast off there, how many people had alligators just to toss into the drain pipes? The legend has its roots in New York City, but there is no evidence or any recorded incidences of alligators climbing out from a home toilet. That didn't stop these tall tales from perpetuating and making its rounds to where I lived. Made believable through trusted older siblings and friends who hoped for a desired effect, they got it. Millions of kids cautious to sit on their toilet, listening for what could possibly be a giant reptile, climbing into their home from the subterranean pipes to feast on your chubby little ass cheeks. Now, turtles, that's a whole different story. Lucky for us, we grew out of that one. But did you think about it? Or was I the only one? It happens one time and it's ruined for everyone. Or that's how it seemed to play out. Decades after the start of this malicious rumor, parents are still somehow petrified of trick-or-treating and that their kid will be the one to bite down on a razor blade hidden in candy or being poisoned during harmless fun by tainted sweets. You can tell me until you're blue in the face that you knew someone that, well, you get the picture. It's just this kind of story that started it all in the first place. Although there was a case in 1974 about a father who murdered his son with a laced pixie stick on Halloween, there have been no proven cases of deaths or harm to children by tainted Halloween candy in 30 years of study. This didn't stop the hysteria, or us from throwing apples when receiving them as Halloween treats in fear of a razor blade. Or just because who wanted an apple as a treat on Halloween? Or the checking of candy by diligent parents. We all thought of this terror as we went out for an evening of tricks or treats, but it didn't stop us. This Halloween horror urban legend was most obviously generated by media coverage of suspected possible threats or from a general anxiety about strangers and their potential for harm. The lesson here is, save Halloween. Continue trick-or-treating with your kids in your neighborhood. Well, you knew this was going to be on the list somewhere, and although the others were fears real to us, they paled into comparison to all-out nuclear war. Something that we learned to expect, or at least anticipate. It was widely understood it was a real possibility. It wasn't just the TV movie the day after, but it was the news, the magazines, TV shows, and forthright conversations that happened at home or anywhere you were. You were not kept in the dark from these conversations, nor did anyone think you should be sheltered from it. But my biggest wake-up call was the HBO original movie, The Man Who Saw Tomorrow. This documentary, and I use that term lightly, hosted by the larger-than-life, and I do mean large, Orson Welles, showed just how nuclear annihilation would begin. Who would start it? And what would become of us? Worst of all, it seemed to know when. Or at least it told us when Nostradamus predicted it would happen. For my calculations, I was going to be barely in high school before it was just all over. Sure, my mother let me watch it in her room with her, but after that part, I ran downstairs petrified, sat with my sister on a bench to get my mind off of it. She had watched it with me, and to distract ourselves, we probably watched something a little bit easier on the eyes, like Alien. So, you see, it was everywhere, and I can't say that threat doesn't loom on occasion even today. That doomsday clock seems to ever inch closer to midnight. On a lighter note, sort of, even into our teens, we feared an entity that we couldn't see and never have. Just looking in a mirror, especially at night, was all it took to manifest a fear brought on from constant word of mouth, tribal knowledge of something that happened to someone else's someone else somewhere far away. Looking into a mirror gave you this inexplicable desire to say the words. It was almost uncontrollable. You knew you shouldn't, but there you were and your mind was saying, go ahead, try it, say it. But did you have the guts to say Bloody Mary 3 times? I didn't think so. None of us wanted to see her. Did we? Well, of course this would be on the list. Like starting with Piranha, why not end with Quicksand? We were promised quicksand. At every corner in any jungle, desert, forest, or backyard pond, quicksand was just a thing we would have to get used to, apparently. What a great storytelling trope. Lucky for us, we had seen enough movies and TV shows to teach us what to do. So I believed with only a tree branch or rope, I could rescue anyone that is foolish enough to get stuck, as long as they don't struggle, am I right? Quicksand is real and can happen in a variety of places, but it's relatively harmless and almost never deadly. To us, quicksand seemed like one of those things we'd have to be on the lookout for, a constant vigil for a danger that summed up a great deal of the common but imaginary stresses that made up the GEN Xperience. They just weren't imaginary at the time. There were stressors in everyday life, and although we often wished to be grown up, or more accurately do what grown-ups could do, we also never wanted to get there. We loved being a kid and all that came with it, even if they were scary like killer bees and pop rocks and soda. Although Gen Xers didn't spend a lot of time thinking about the future of civilization or what would be left for us in terms of social security or the workforce, we also didn't have the constant barrage of news coverage or headlines in front of our faces, and we weren't the ones watching 24-hour news networks. We were limited in reach to the outside world, and it never dawned on us that we could be sharing our getting ready for the day routine with masses of strangers. And we certainly couldn't doom scroll before going to bed, for that matter. Therapy is a new after-school activity instead of going outside to play. We enjoyed being kids and all that comes with it, even with the threat of nuclear war. We knew we'd have to grow up someday and all of that would be ours, like it or not. But for now, it was all about the new and exciting discoveries and sharing them with your friends having fun. That's what makes the GEN Xperience so special, so memorable. I hope this show was memorable too, and you show me a little love by clicking the like button. Hey, maybe even the subscribe and alert too. It's free. Check out other great things on the channel and be sure to drop by in a week. Until next time.